Have you ever thought of starting your own business? Making your life your own? Now's the time. To get started. Welcome back to Starting a Business Simplified. I'm your host, Suzy Rains. And in this episode, I have a wonderful conversation with Cheri Andrews, the author of Smooth Sailing, an Essential Guide to Legally Protecting Your Business. This is her revised and expanded edition that she has just published. And in this episode, it is her launch day for the book. And she had been on my podcast last year, and we talked about small business legal. She is a licensed attorney and trademark and copyright, as well as small business attorney. And one of the things that we wanted to bring attention to is the book, the difference between her first book, Smooth Sailing, and this book that she has written. And it has so much more in it that we're going to share on the podcast. But just bringing awareness to legally protecting your small business and doing that first, having that be the first thing that you do so that you make sure everything that you're doing in your business, you are protected and you don't have risk that's open and can cause so many issues as a small business owner. So I'm excited to have her back, and I'm excited about this conversation and her personal experience in her own business on this journey. Welcome back to the podcast, Cheri. I'm so happy that you're here, and today's an exciting day for you. Tell us what's going on.
It is an exciting day for me, and I am thrilled to be here today, Suzy, because this day has just been building and building, and it's launch day for the second edition of my book. It's been retitled, so it's Smooth Sailing, an Essential Guide to Legally Protecting Your Business. And I'm just so excited to get it out there and get it in the hands of entrepreneurs and small business owners everywhere so that they can enjoy the peace of mind of knowing that they're putting the right protections in place for themselves and their business.
Yeah, and I reached out to you. I knew you were starting your second book after we did a podcast episode last year, and from the first book and just from a legal perspective, just talking really about those legal things that a lot of people aren't aware of that's in the first book. So this time I just wanted to dive into the new book. So like what's happening in there and what's the difference between the first book and this book?
Okay, so for those who are watching this as video, the first book was a young book. It's a young girl on the cover. The book was about 120 pages. It's only this thick. And it was really geared when I wrote it to brand new business owners. Here's the 5 main areas that you need to be thinking about when you go into business for yourself to get yourself legally protected, to make sure you're doing things right from the get-go. Well, with the new book, because I've had 3 more years of practicing under my belt, working with small business owners, seeing what they're dealing with, watching their businesses grow, watching my own practice grow, I've learned a lot. They've learned a lot. I felt like, okay, my business has grown up. My book needs to grow up too. So the new book has a grown-up woman on the cover who's clearly very much got things under control. The book is now, as you can see, much thicker. It's about 270 pages instead of 120. And I've added so much. So all of the original material is still there, except for what was updated because laws changed and things are a little bit different. But I've added into that things that you need to know as your business grows. If you start bringing on employees, that opens up a whole host of new legal requirements that you need to be aware of. So that was added in. The original book had very thin chapters on copyright and trademark. This version has substantial chapters on copyright and trademark and the things that you need to know and be aware of as a small business owner. I think my most proud addition to this new version is the chapter on entrepreneurial mindset, though.
Yes. And when I read some of that, I was like, this is beautiful. So for those people that listened to our episode last year, we were very much talking about the legal requirements. we all have to have. There's no way around it. It's not a gray area. It's you do have to have these things in place to protect yourself and your clients, which is totally true. But I love, love, love that you are also talking about the mindset, the entrepreneurial mindset, and combining those two things because how we think and feel. And the fact that you shared, you've taken your experience from the last 3 years. So the first book was written right out of the gate. This is what I want to tell the world. And then you worked in your practice and worked with small business owners and learned and grew and changed and evolved. So now your book is twice as long with all that wonderful information that you've learned. And this is what I teach to my clients. And when I work with clients is you have to start somewhere. So let's just get started. So I think of your first book as like, you just got started. You're like, people need to know this information. I'm going to get it out there to the world and then keep going. So it's like you keep going and you keep learning and growing and expanding. And then you add that to the value that you offer to the world. And that to me feels like the new book. It's like you have all of this amazing, valuable information. So I would love to dive into the mindset piece and what it is, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about where that came from for you.
So, to be quite honest, a lot of it came from my own struggles as a small business owner and the things that I was going through and, thinking about what does it really take to be a small business owner? What kind of mindset do you have? How do you need to be able to work? Because it doesn't matter how legally savvy you are or how many legal protections you put into place. If you don't have the right mindset, you will never be successful as an entrepreneur or a small business owner. So it's things like understanding that entrepreneurship is not a straight uphill climb. It's a windy road with twists and turns and switchbacks, and you have to be willing to go along for the ride and understand that that's part of the journey and that, everything feels like two steps forward, one step back. I've made some progress, then I lost some. It's part of the package of being an entrepreneur. Nobody has a straight rise to fame. And, so that was one thing. Another thing was how we treat ourselves as entrepreneurs and how important it is to have that self care piece in there because as I thought about the way I was doing things, I realized this on a vacation that I was running myself, my first year in business, running myself ragged, working late nights, early mornings, weekends, because I had so many things I wanted to do and so many things I wanted to implement in my business. There just wasn't enough time to do it all. And I'm sitting on a vacation realizing, dang, I started this business to have some freedom. And as a boss, I suck. I like really suck. And what can I do to change that? So I started being much more intentional with my time and building me time into my calendar so that I would take care of myself and I wouldn't skip the morning stretching and the afternoon walks and the things that allow you to be healthy and continue to do what you're doing. That all of those things play into your ability to be successful. And so, I touch on a lot of different things that networking, the importance of managing your calendar, just all of these things that you need to be aware of as you're moving through entrepreneurship. And yeah, I know it has nothing to do with legal and it may feel like it's out of place in a legal book, but to me, it's the most important piece of the puzzle.
I would say it has everything to do with legal. I'm gonna challenge you on that one because you said it when you were telling your story just now. You were running yourself ragged, and that's what happens in when we work for somebody else. I love that you said I sucked as a boss. Like because if you think about it, we leave a business, we leave working for somebody else to do our own thing, to have freedom and to be able to relax and to be able to take our time and to be able to do self-care because we're not getting it there. And so stepping in it does seamlessly go. So if you are able to take the vacation, do the morning stretching, have all those beautiful things in place, the reason you get to do that is because you are legally protected. Like you have, if you are a business owner who puts all those legal things into place, I'm going to give an example that happened this week. I'm collaborating with another coach, and her and we're thinking about offering another service through her business. And so we're always talking about what do we want to do? How do we want to do it? And we map everything out and then putting together a contract. And so it's like when we know I have to do XYZ legally to protect my business, we can sleep at night. It's like, oh, I can go take a day off knowing that I'm taken care of, knowing that what's happening in my business, I'm okay. Because I think that stress level is there when we're always in the unknown. We're in that what if scenario. And so I love that you share that because I just I just did a podcast episode. I can't remember if it's live yet or not. Sorry for those of you listening. I'm there's episodes that are waiting to publish, but I talk about that I make the most advances in my business when I take time off. I actually do better when I take time off, when I take care of myself, when I'm sleeping at night, and when I'm stretching in the morning, when I'm taking care of myself, my business then runs smoother. So I
It's
love that
that
you're sharing that.
it's that old adage, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So if we're not taking the time to take care of ourselves and fill ourselves up, we have nothing left to give our clients. You know, when we're running ourselves ragged and just depleting everything, that's also, and something you said sparked this thought in me. When you're running yourself ragged, that's also when you make mistakes. And, so part of, yes, being legally protected is taking care of yourself so you don't make stupid mistakes because you're so tired. You don't remember that you owed some client something by some deadline that you've now missed. Right.
Yeah. Oh, I love that that came to you because I like to use the example. I just hired a bookkeeper this year. I was doing my own bookkeeping, which I was totally comfortable doing. I'm not a bookkeeper. I was not trained in the bookkeeping, doing the best I could with what I had. Soon as I hired a bookkeeper, I was in heaven. Like I felt better because I don't have to worry about they're going to do all the tracking, make sure things are categorized correctly. So I'm getting the most benefit from my taxes without me having to do all the work and research around it and wondering if I missed something. I'm confident, but they've brought to my attention a lot of things that I saved money in taxes on that I didn't know just from my experience in business. So similarly with legal, I feel like that's the same thing. There's some things that you can, and I know your book does give people these steps here, make sure you have these things, but you can't do it alone. A
Right.
way to take care of yourself is to get that advice, work with an attorney or like the school that you offer, the academy. Wise Owl Academy gives you that knowledge. And we talked about it in the episode from last year. It gives you the knowledge to know what you need.
Exactly. And within Wise Owl Academy, I'm able to teach, okay, here's what an independent contractor agreement looks like. Here's what needs to be covered. Here's why you need these pieces. And now that you know and understand these things, here's a template you can use. So I'm able to do that. I would never put templates in a book because you need to be able to explain to people how to use them. Putting text in somebody's hand without the understanding of how to use it and how to customize it is a recipe for disaster. But within the Wise Owl Academy, I can do that because I am teaching and explaining how to use them. So that's a great place to go if you've recognized, okay, I need these pieces, I need these things. Now, how do I get them? That's one resource.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always recommend that. I have it for my clients, recommending Wise Owl Academy because it's a great starting place when you're brand new, which is who you're speaking to. It's to know what you need to know. I don't know if
Yes.
that makes sense. Like you don't know what you don't know, but you need to know certain things. And I always tell people, I'm like, I am not an attorney. I'm not a financial advisor. Like, I'm not licensed in any of that stuff. And having something like the Wise Owl Academy gives people a place to go, huh, what do I need to know? And what's the why? Instead of just going out there and doing things and possibly making mistakes that you don't realize you're making. until it's too late. So I love that. So what else can people expect in this new book that you want to share with the audience?
So I took everything that was in the old book, as I mentioned, and updated it for the changes in laws, brought in the new law that it applies this year, the Corporate Transparency Act. So take just a minute to talk about that. That's a new federal a piece of federal legislation that requires all small business owners who are set up as an LLC or a corporation, if they filed through their Department of State, they now need to file with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network something called a beneficial owner information report. And they have until, if they were existing prior to January 1st of this year, they have until the end of the year to get that filed. But it's a brand new piece of legislation. So we need to educate people that it's out there and that information is in the book and what you need to be able to be compliant and where to go to file it. So that's one thing. I added a lot of information about your team and employment and bringing people on. So, both from the perspective of bringing on independent contractors and what you need to deal with them versus bringing on employees and what kind of requirements that opens up for you as a small business owner and things that you need to take care of. I also took what was very minor mentions of copyright and trademark was, I think, in the first book, a total of maybe 6 pages. It's now two full chapters, one each for copyright and trademark, with a lot of information on what, for let's take trademark, for example, what the USPTO, the United States Patent and Trademark Office, is looking for when you file a trademark application, what constitutes a good mark versus a weak mark in terms of can you get it through registration with the USPTO, and talking about the myths, things people believe about trademark that are just way off base because they're out there and it's a lot of misinformation. And I want to debunk all those myths and make sure people understand what's really going on here. So that was a big chunk of what was added.
Yeah, I love that you put that information in your book. For those people that are watching and listening, Cheri is an attorney, licensed trademark attorney, meaning she went to school. She knows what she's talking about. And when you talk about myths and things like that, I'm like, okay, go read Cheri's book. You can read the new one, old one, new. I recommend both of them. If you're brand new, you can start with the first one because it's smaller and it's a lot of legal stuff. But once you read the second one because it's going to be even more information. And I love that you're putting in the mindset work. But I always like to highlight know the source. So when you're in your head and you're like thinking, "Oh, trademark means XYZ." Okay, where did you get that information? Did you just hear it somewhere or did you just see it on someone do a YouTube video about it that has no clue? Like where did that come from? So I like to point people to the authority. You are a licensed attorney in this subject. Yes, in the book, people can trust that. Always know your source. So I love that you identify some of those myths because we don't know they're myths. We're taking them as truths. And just having somebody that is an authority and knows what they're talking about saying, nope, that's not true. This is
Yep.
actually what it is. I love that. That's so helpful. And especially as business owners. And I want to say that this new book, this version, legal for people that don't do legal, they're like, yuck, boring. I mean, I'm a business coach and I tell people, oh, I love it. And they're like, no, I don't want to talk about business. They want to have a business, but they don't want to talk about business. They want to legally protect their business, but they don't want to talk about legal. It's like, this book is a fun read. Like I actually, it's, you make it in a way that's easy to read, easy to understand, and you want to keep reading. It's not one that you fall asleep to. There's a lot of legal books out there that would be perfect for sleep aids. This book is not one of them. I do want to make that perfectly clear because I'm not the author that's promoting it. I'm just a reader and I like deep topics. And this book to me was just easy to read and easy to follow.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. There's a quote by Toni Morrison that's something like, if there's a book you want to read and it hasn't been written, then you must write it. And that's what I did. I wanted a book for small business owners that gave them the information they needed and the empowerment to feel confident about moving forward with their business, knowing that they've got their legal ducks in a row and things are in place, but that was also easy to read, easy to understand, had clear, actionable steps. And when I started, I looked at all the books that were available on the market, and the majority of them, yeah, total snooze fest. And I wanted something that people could actually read and digest. And that's why I wrote it and why I wrote it the way I did. It's in plain English. Yes, there's legal terms because I can't avoid that, but I explain what those legal terms are and what they mean. And I try to infuse a little bit of humor here and there where it's appropriate. And, you know, yes, make it, I love that you said it's fun to read because that lets me know that I accomplished what I set out to do and that you actually can read this book cover to cover. It's not a novel. There's not a great plot line, but it's got the information and you're like, okay, well, that's good. Now, what else do I need to know? Right.
Yeah, and it's actionable things that make sense. And that's where, from my perspective, it's like, oh, now I know that concept and I know how to apply it in a simple way. And again, this is Business Simplified. I'm all about simplifying. And that's what I loved when I read the first book. And that's why I asked you to be on my podcast. I'm like, this is what the small business owners need. And I love that you said, if you can't find it, write it, because I'm that way with everything. I'm like, if you can't find what you need in this world, create it. Just make it yourself. And I
Yep.
love that. And it's inspiring for those people out there who are frustrated with something, whatever that might be. It could be creating a community or having a support system, writing a book, whatever the case may be. If you can't find it, just create it. That's a beautiful way to get what you want in the world. So thank you so much, Cheri, for being here. Is there anything that you would recommend to the listeners that are listening to this episode other than make sure you order the book?
Yeah. Buy the book. And I just want to say for those small business owners out there, getting legally protected isn't something that can wait. This is the number one mistake small business owners make is that they think, well, when I'm making six figures or when I have more than 10 or 100 or whatever the crazy number is clients, or when I've been doing this for 3 years or 5 years or whatever, they think they can wait until their business is bigger. They're making more money. They're bringing in more clients. But the truth is your first client is just as risky as your 100th client. Your first dollar is as worthy of protection as your 100 millionth dollar. You need to do this up front because if you don't, by the time you get around to it, it could be too late and you could be getting burned.
Thank you for that. And I want to add to it that when people get started, everything can change. You just brought up a new legislation that came down that's new, and laws are always changing. So when you start and you get started correctly with the legal stuff you need to begin your business before you take that first client, anything can change, and that's okay because you have the foundation. Then you have everything's already created, and you just have to go in and update. Like once you have your privacy policy written, like if things change, you can just go in and pull out the stuff that's old, put in the new stuff that's new, and you're not recreating the wheel every single time. So just getting right now, what are the laws that need to be followed as a small business owner? Let me get that in place. And then as things change, it's easier to just update what's already existing. Always easier once I always tell people, just get started. Just do the legal things that are required to get started. And then as your business grows, you learn and you grow with it and things change and we just make changes.
Yep. I agree.
I love that. Well, thank you, Cheri, for being here. I'm going to put in the show notes all the things of how they can get your book. I think both books are very powerful. So I'm going to put information about both. This particular episode is about your second edition of the book and all the information about Wise Owl Academy too, because I very much promote that to people. It's a great starting place for people to get questions answered around what they actually need to get started with legal protection in their business. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Suzy. I really appreciate it.
And for the listeners out there, as always, keep it simple.